thank you again, everybody else, for joining. Without that, I'll hand it over to Bruce. And I know that there's quite a few of you other members of the XPRIZE team, but I will let Bruce start off from here, and I'll be quiet. It's all you, sir. Oh, are
okay.
You here?
Thank you, Mandy. Let's see. I need to be able to share the screen, please.
I did that for you just now.
Oh, okay. There we go. Just as a premise to start out, just want to mention everybody that it's my fault, but the communications that went out regarding this meeting over the last several weeks said it was going to be about XPRIZE update, etc. That was not what I had intended on presenting today. But rather what we're doing at Drawdown Hemp. And I just didn't get around to correcting that initial messaging out to the group. But I think you'll find that this is going to be a lot more interesting anyway.
I'll take some of that blame too, Bruce. I knew better and I didn't follow up on my side. So yeah, there was 2 different advertisements that went out. So I apologize.
Yeah, we've all been busy. So anyway, let me introduce you, everybody to Drawdown Hemp. Which we started about a year ago. We're a think tank, right? Completely focused on quantifying and creating awareness of hemp as a major way to address the climate crisis. If my computer cooperates, I can move to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so we've probably had maybe 45 people that have gone to drawdownhemp.org and express their interest in helping out with our investigations. But these are kind of most of the people, I would say, that are usual and regular contributors towards this effort. Why hemp? Why are we doing this? Well, first off, I think probably the most important reason is that we are, as a human society, we are in a terrible situation. In the next 10 years, we could get to the point where we have a runaway climate crisis, and there's nothing that we can do to fix it. And strangely enough, you would think humans know enough to face up to a clear and present danger, but there are solutions that are being posed out there, and I don't know if they're all going to work. I'm not going to say anything bad about other types of solutions, but quite frankly, I think we need to have a solution that we know we can execute reliably and immediately. So let me talk to that point. As a means, hemp is a natural means of direct air capture. So those of you that are familiar with direct air capture technologies, taking CO2 directly out of ambient air, and it's a man-made technology. It's kind of our competition from a mindset out there in the marketplace to a large degree. But I think what we have here with hemp is the greatest immediate opportunity. In other words, we don't have to wait 10 years, right, for a bunch of direct air capture machines to be financed and built. It's something that we can expand and do today. And additionally, we can also do it on an ongoing basis, year after year after year after year, with a lot of the solutions that we're going to talk about today regarding hemp. So the solutions we're going to cover are hemp's potential to not only sequester and avoid atmospheric CO2. And that's very important. Specifically, there are entities out there that are getting funded by the governments to do things like capture CO2 out of smokestacks from cement industries and the energy industries, et cetera, and the steel mills. And then using that CO2, that's not what we're talking about, because that, while it's a good thing to do, what we're talking about here is taking CO2 directly out of the atmosphere. That's what needs to be done ultimately, and be done on a very large scale. So another reason why hemp is critical is we can execute all these things that I'm going to talk about here today as a rotation crop. A lot of folks are probably concerned, okay, well, if you grow all this hemp, it's the same argument as when ethanol was introduced decades ago as a fuel alternative. Is it going to interfere with the food supply, et cetera? I'm going to try to answer that question as best as possible. But as a rotation crop, I feel that hemp has the best potential for launching what may come to be called a biogenic economy, whereby we finally come to realize that we've been doing things wrong for the last century and a little bit longer by making things out of stuff that's mined from under the ground or something like that. But instead, what we need to do is make everything possible from crops if we can. So it's a rotation crop that allows us to continue to get the food that we need, but also every couple of years, you do a rotation crop and you make sure that your soils are healthy and revitalized. Third, the third reason why hemp is that hemp can provide a consistent, high quality feedstock for numerous applications nearly anywhere on the planet. If you think about it, if you're a product manufacturer and you have your facilities in Mexico and you have another one up in Calgary or another one out in some other place, Saudi Arabia or something like that. The bottom line is you want a consistent source of this feedstock that you're using in the new biogenic economy. You're trying to make everything possible from renewable plant material, and it has to be very, very consistent. So at least with hemp, it can be grown in all these different places. It may take specialized cultivars in order to grow the way you want it to grow and give you the results you want. But it's a lot better than having to change your feedstock materials because you want to use bamboo in Thailand and you want to use pine if you're in the foothills of Colorado to make your products. You want to have a consistent quality feedstock. That's the bottom line in the future, and that ain't going to change. So the last thing, great reason for hemp as this resource, the main resource for a biogenic economy going forward, is that there's multiple opportunities for carbon credits. And we're seeing the carbon credit market going up dramatically recently. What's interesting here is not only can we get carbon credits for sequestering CO2 into these products, and some of them, like many building materials, could last for a long, long time. But also there's carbon credits available as well. So again, let's say you're a manufacturer someplace in one of those locations anywhere around the world, and you have this body of farmers around you within a reasonable amount of distance, right? They can get the carbon credits for growing hemp in a regenerative agricultural fashion, while you're getting credits for sinking CO2 into your products. So there's those, and then there's the potential for carbon avoidance credits as well. So we have three different ways that carbon credits can be realized, and that's going to make a big difference, I think, going forward. So let's get into the meat of it. Over the past year, we started out with the objective of trying to get a handle on what the biggest ways were that hemp could potentially reduce atmospheric CO2, not only in terms of tons of CO2 sequestered per year, but also tons of CO2 avoided per year. There is a contest that several other entities, hemp-centric entities, have also joined in along with us with different types of solutions. When we first took a look at this, we had just this X Prize opportunity, we had just started probably 6 weeks before it was announced. And so we thought, oh, this will be great because it's perfectly aligned. Elon Musk will definitely want to know about all the ways to avoid CO2 as well as capture and sequester it. But alas, they were only interested in things that could help sequester CO2. They weren't at all interested in avoidance. And if you think about it from a scientific standpoint, having a very limited scope and looking for the next silver bullet on how to sequester CO2, I applaud that idea. I thought that was really, really smart on them, on their part. And so there, who knows, they may come up with another one that says, now we're looking for the best technologies to avoid CO2. We'll see. But net, we, over a period of about 6 or 7 months, we had kind of an interesting opportunity as we were developing all these quick looks at what the potential would be. And then it gave us a good opportunity to look at them and say, okay, which one of these things do we think might be able to do what the X Prize wanted to do? And the X Prize specifically stated that the end goal was to be able to sequester 1 gigaton of CO2 per year on an ongoing basis, year after year after year after year after year. So it came to us that things that we had analyzed so far, and I'm not saying our numbers were right. You look at any one of these quick, dirty, cursory analyses, right? And there's going to be problems with anything because it's very general. We're taking a look at the overall market, before it's ever broken down and say, oh, well, what's realistic about that? How much could we actually capture, et cetera? So it's a very big number. It's a very big 40,000 foot view, looking down and saying, okay, if we made every single building around the world out of hempcrete, as an example, that was the first thing we looked at, and came to the conclusion, and it was hard to get those numbers, by the way. It's very hard to get that number in China. They don't share that kind of information. So you have to kind of guesstimate some of this stuff. And we weren't seeing that it was necessarily going all the way up to 1 gigaton per year. So we had to look around, and we eventually found a solution that we had already kind of done a quick analysis on before. And it's not on this chart simply because the X Prize is still an open competition, and those third parties that we would be interacting with may not want to have their names ultimately mentioned, et cetera. So we actually found one that met that bill, and another one in a different category that would almost meet that bill, but that one was all carbon avoidance. So we ended up with what we think is a pretty good solution, and it should be able to at scale sequester well over a gigaton per year. But let me talk to these different categories very briefly. As you guys know, the number one contributor, right, to our climate crisis right now is petroleum and natural gas, the fossil fuels. And we didn't spend a lot of time looking at this because it's not something that we wanted to continue to investigate at the time, because we saw that it was a avoidance measure, not a sequestration measure. So we got into this to a certain degree and then said, okay, we got to focus now on our X Prize. So this was probably the analysis, from 5 months ago. But the point here is, and I just want to point out, this is a logarithmic scale chart. So one bar isn't necessarily twice as much. It's 10 times or 100 times more. But it's clear that our objective, humanity's objective, number one, has to be to quit burning fossil fuels. End of story. No arguments. Boom, has to be done. After that, we can take a look at other things, like in the world of fuels, right? And that kind of in the world of fuels, and that's plugging these oil wells out there. There's an opportunity to put in a lot of hempcrete, or it could be biochar and bio oil or something like that. And the avoidance is huge. I mean, that's a big number. And it's a CO2e number based upon, I think, 80 times the equivalent of a regular CO2 in methane. So that's a great application. That's something we need to go after. It's being funded right now by the government, something to the tune of over $1 billion, and hemp would make a great solution for that. Also, here's the next bar over is using hempcrete to in existing wells just to avoid the methane there. That's another opportunity that needs to be investigated, but we haven't had the time. So it's just on the radar screen to take a look at later. Hempcrete was a great solution. That was the first thing we assumed would be the best thing to propose, but we couldn't get the numbers to work to a gigaton per year. We could be wrong, by the way. I can't say that enough. We could have calculated that wrong. It's very possible that that we did, but when we did our analysis, we couldn't quite make it happen. Hemp blocks are another opportunity. Hemp biochar enhanced blocks are another opportunity. You can see that there's some great numbers there. One of the things that I had been investigating about a year ago, just before we started this, was developing hemp rebar. But we didn't get around to analyzing that. We haven't analyzed oriented strand board replacement yet either. That's both are very great applications. But when it comes to OSB and also paper and hemp wood, these are all great applications, but they're a little bit more complex because you have to contend with this whole idea that wood itself is potentially a carbon negative material, and now you're going to replace it with another carbon negative material. So the analysis got a little bit more complicated. So those are on our future analysis lists. So retrofitting buildings is also something that's interesting, but from the folks that we talked to, I think his name was Grant, didn't really have any numbers. So we didn't have a way to build a model around that. Hemp insulation, of course, is a great application. Hemp biocomposites, woven hemp biocomposites. That's something that I'm personally involved in. As you guys know, probably I made the hemp car with all the fibers in the body were 100% hemp of that car. And that was about 6 or 7 years ago. So I was definitely on a tear to continue that investigation. For some reason, it doesn't show something like 3 million metric tons of CO2 being sequestered per year. It just didn't. I tried to fix it and it just didn't work on my spreadsheet. But there was a cost avoidance, or there was a carbon avoidance and a carbon sequestration figure for this. Plastics, everybody knows that's a great thing. Hemp plastics are a great application to both sequester and to avoid CO2. Carbon black replacement, cool application. Paper, we're really looking to see some really cool numbers in the future. Batteries, the problem with analyzing batteries is just there's 20 people say that they can do it, and I can't get any of them on the phone to answer the questions about it, but we probably will, hopefully, in the future. Graphite is an application. Graphite and then graphene as well are applications that we all know are going to be huge, but right now that number just shows how much graphite is currently being produced just from mining right now. So it's there as a placeholder until we find just how many applications it can fit in. Textiles is an application we really are excited about looking into over the next couple of months. Then let's move right on over here to beef substitute. This one is really, it blows my mind. Right now, if you take a look at all the cattle that's being raised around the world right now, just the methane production from them suckers, belching out methane. It's about 1.5 gigatons per year, right? And it's no wonder that there's a lot of concern about that. So if there's a way to replace beef, excuse me, with hemp seeds, which a lot of people are starting to do now, that would be a wonderful thing. Also, while we're on that topic, if all of the lands, and I'm not saying that hamburgers are bad, I eat them myself. I like steak and I like hamburgers, but if all of the land mass that was freed up from raising cattle, right, that would be you start asking the question, well, if we're going to grow all this hemp, where are we going to grow it, right? If you free up all that land mass from raising beef, that's the equivalent of China, Australia, and the United States. Think about that. So we would have more than enough to grow hemp, more than enough area to grow a lot of hemp if you're growing it as a dual purpose crop. There's also this whole concept of lab grown beef. And I can't remember the author. I was sending it around to the team just a few weeks ago. Now I can't find it in my bookmarks, but he said that the three biggest disruptions that are going to happen in the world over the next decade or two were going to be SWB, solar, wind, battery, and electric, smart electric distribution. The second one was autonomous vehicles, right? Where people no longer would be buying cars. You just, click on your Uber app and then an autonomous vehicle shows up in 2 minutes and you don't have to make car payments all year long. Totally makes sense to me. The third one was fermentation technology to make lab processed beef. And from what I read about that, this stuff doesn't taste that bad. It's supposed to be pretty good. And they're saying that, it's just so expensive to raise livestock in the future. And people in 10 years, maybe time, the author was saying, and I can't remember his name, he's well respected. 10 years time, it could be that that people aren't going to care. They're going to be able to get their cheeseburgers and their chicken sandwiches and their steaks from fermented lab-based technologies. Of course, if that happens, then the opportunity for hemp seed to replace beef and other meats is going to be less, but nonetheless, it's a phenomenon that's going to happen, I think, and it's probably going to be big. The next one is biochar, hemp biochar added to cropland. This one is pretty big. There's a couple different articles out there and different recommendations from different folks making biochar. And one of our team members is Paul Anderson, by the way, PhD, who was co-author of 2009 study. I think the title was something like biochar, all biochar is not created equal. And in fact, it isn't. And in talking with James Gaspard, who's been a guest speaker on Mandy's shows here in the past and met with him a few times, he explained it to me that hemp biochar is a really superior biochar because of its small macro and large macro size pores. So there's all this real estate that's able to retain water and be impregnated with fertilizers, etc. And so instead of making your biochar from chicken poop, etc., you want to use things that grow very quickly, and hemp definitely does that. And so his recommendation on that, I believe, was that usually you're probably only going to need 1 metric ton per acre of cropland. There are a lot of folks out there that say, oh no, you need a whole lot more. And he says, if it's good, high quality biochar, then you're going to need only 1. On the other hand, there's a lot of folks out that a lot of articles out there that say, if you're trying to recover or reestablish abandoned croplands, then you may need 10 tons per acre of high quality biochar. So that makes that next column there really important. I believe that there's that it was Project Drawdown that pointed out that there's over a 1.1 billion acres. I think it was acres, might be hectares, but I think it was acres of abandoned cropland, and that about 40% of that could be recovered and added into the productive lands around the world to grow more food in the future. So just imagine if we take those 400 million acres and just do nothing but grow hemp on them for about 3 or 4 years, reestablish them, get the soil organic content increased. That would chew up a lot of biochar, and so that was interesting, and it would increase the amount of croplands would be available for growing whatever it is that we need in the future. Livestock feed is something that we're going to look at into the future here. Biochar anaerobic digestion, I know nothing about, but Jacek on our team seems to understand it. He said, Bruce, you're not smart enough to understand that. Just understand that all living beings are anaerobic digesters. I said, okay, fine, just give me a number, I'll plug it in. So to find out more about that, talk to Jacek. Phytoremediation and sequestration is another opportunity, obviously just going all around the world, wherever there are these Superfund sites, and planting hemp on them, and then figuring out a way to use that hemp, which is something, by the way, we're looking at from our proposal for XPRIZE. But just take a look at that number. It's 100 million per year. Now, of course, sooner or later, you're going to run out of all those Superfund sites. You'll have them all cleaned up. It'll be a wonderful thing, hopefully. But it's something that needs to be done, and that's another way that we can increase the croplands. So we've already identified 3 different ways that we can increase croplands dramatically. And here's the last thing that we looked at so far, and it was kind of like a whim. I think I was on. It was another. Sorry, Mandy. It was another Zoom session about climate, and I'm trying to remember what it was now. But they did a special event on this. I think it was air miners, yeah. And it's called biomass harvesting and sequestration. And when I brought this up to the team, they were not happy. But the whole concept here is what these guys proposed at air miners was that trees be grown for the sole purpose of being cut down and thrown into a giant ditch. Now, the ones that they were engineering were obviously by being dug out by these giant earth movers, and the holes in the ground look like a small Grand Canyon, and the trees would be buried under 60 meters of fill on top of them, thereby sequestrating that carbon fairly well. What's intriguing about that is that you don't have to move the material very far, hopefully, if it's grown around there, and you just put it into the hole and bury it. And there's no additional processing. You're just putting that carbon, and it's, as we know, plants are 45% carbon. So all of a sudden you throw in, all these trees into a hole, and you're covering it up, and they're not going to biodegrade because there's no oxygen there. So the idea, however, for the team, and when I proposed that, I said, why don't we just do that with hemp? Because everybody in the hemp industry knows that hemp grows 4 times faster than trees. And everybody goes like, but there's so much better use for hemp. Whoa, what about all the clothing? Okay, forget it. Forget I brought it up. Anyway, it is something, especially if we get to the point, and I see it being very possible in the next 10 years, if these other solutions that are being proposed out there, like direct air capture, just don't happen, we might have to be at that point where we just say, if we don't take this CO2 out of the atmosphere right now, it's all new game, martial law. We're digging giant pits and we're putting hemp into them. Sounds terrible, but who knows? We got to have our options laid out in the future. So the original inspiration came for drawdown hemp came when I was editing the new version of this book. Those of you that may not be familiar with it, I would imagine most of you are. The Emperor Wears No Clothes by Jack Herer. In 1985, he was talking about using hemp to save an inhabitable planet. And in the book, there's a quote on one of the first pages. It says, I don't know if hemp is going to save the world, but it's the only thing we can. Was he right? I don't think so. But Jack was very outspoken, right? But bottom line, if you have to, had to have only one resource that was available, and you had to choose, right? This is a pretty important game to save an habitable planet. If you had to choose one resource, I think he was right. Then that would be the one resource that you would turn to. So I just think he phrased it a little bit incorrectly. By the way, for those of you, this is a shameless plug. For those of you that are interested in getting a copy of that book, there are some folks that are still bootlegging that on the internet, and it's their copies are actually more expensive than the original that supports the Jack Herer Foundation. But just click on that UR or that whatever you call it, the QR code, and that will bring you right to the website. It's the official 14th edition, and I was blessed to have the opportunity to edit that new edition. But the bottom line here is Jack posed the question, can hemp, and he gave lots of examples, but he didn't quantify it. So that's what inspired myself and others to do what we're doing here at Drawdown Hemp. He had opened up the Pandora's box and advocated the idea that hemp could potentially help us, and but he did not quantify all these things. So that's why we decided that we should. So for those of you wondering why I'm telling you all this, is we are not done doing what we need to do. In the future here, I think you're seeing it happening right now, but I think it's going to increase in the future. You're seeing more and more financing folks coming into this market and saying, gosh, this is a good way to make money. That's a good way. Here's this opportunity. Here's that opportunity. I think the way we're looking at it, instead of how do we make money per se, obviously you ultimately want to ask that question, but is what's the fastest things we can do with this plant to reduce the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And so, if we had to choose only 3 out of that list that I showed you, which ones are the most important, right? So that's why we're doing that. And so we need more help as we go forward. And so far, thanks to Mandy and GHA, that's where just about everybody has come and joined in on this effort. We are just a think tank. We are not out making money. We're just trying to make it fairly well understood where the best opportunities are to use this plant to save an inhabitable planet. And there's a couple of the things that anyone listening can do if they want. Because we competed for the X Prize, we had to be represented by a legal entity, and so Steve Heising and Deb Sterling are with the Citizens for Clean Energy in Boulder, Colorado. And I think there are 2 501c3s with that same name, but this is the one that's in Boulder, Colorado. If you're so inclined, we'd be happy to take checks to help finance us going forward. But there's an even easier way, and that's to do something that Steve pointed out to me just recently. And I'm going to do this today because I didn't even know about this a week ago. But they are set up to be able to, for folks that use Amazon, Amazon will give, I think it's 0.5% of their sales, of the sales revenues to these not-for-profits. And so that works out kind of nice, and it doesn't cost you anything. So all you got to do if you want to help support this whole idea of investigating how hemp can help us is simply go to smile.amazon.com and sign up and say, this is the entity that I want to let Amazon donate from my purchases 1/2% of anything I purchase on Amazon. It's so sweet. It doesn't, it's no skin off anybody's nose, and it helps support this and move the hemp industry forward. So with that, I want to say we are also standing in total solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Our thoughts and best wishes are out there for folks like Sergey and Roman and others, and we hope they're safe. So that's what I have for today, and I'd welcome any questions.
Thanks, Bruce. That was awesome. I saw quite a few questions come in. I was just kind of going to scroll back up on them. If anybody has a question you'd like to go ahead and jump in, please feel free to do so. I'll scroll back through these comments. Let's see here.
Can I ask a question?
Please. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So my question is that you talked about the cover crop. I mean, the rotational crop. Have anybody seen the impact of hemp as a cover crop?
Ryan, I see your face on here. There's quite a few people on the call I know that are in the regenerative agriculture space. I don't know if anybody would like to jump in. Ryan?
Sure. What was one more time real quick, rephrase the question?
My question was that you had talked about the rotational crop, the impact of that, on the soil and carbon sequestration. But what about the cover crop?
You're wondering what the cover crop might do for carbon sequestration if you keep the cover on the soil as like a perennial cover. You're wondering how it affects the carbon sequestration in conjunction with cannabis or standalone?
Correct. Yeah, that's my question.
Well,
Okay.
I suppose that there's a little bit to unpack there, but depending on kind of the end point of where the cannabis and also the perennial cover is what's happening to it. I guess in my world, so our perennial cover, it goes into cows, and it's used as a hay, as a forage, and so I'm really not. I may not be the best well versed on carbon and how that plays into that aspect where the perennial cover will go into an animal, and then how does that play in the sequestration, but.
There are a couple others on the call too. I know Neil, I saw you took your mic off. Neil's been in soil science and carbon for quite a while. Do you have any feedback about that question?
Yeah, that's a good point because you're not going to continuous crop hemp, right? It will have its own problems. You start doing it and you will have long-term issues of bugs and disease and weeds and all the things that come with that sort of monoculture attitude. The use of as a cover is a good question because the benefits occur primarily to the following crop, right? We would like to think all this cover cropping is really going to actually improve the following crop. A lot of unknown when you go and add 8 or 9 metric tons of material. One thing I did hear that was quite interesting is the fiber people want to grow it only for about 60 days approximately, I think. And I said, okay, well, that implies that you might be able to get it in as a follow crop. So you might get 2 crops off a piece of ground like winter wheat or soybean, some sort of relationship there. So there's some thinkings in that way. But you're right, nobody knows what the effects are. There is those that have grown corn after hemp will comment that they believe they see a bump, right, of some sort. I don't know whether it's a yield or vigor or what have you, but in that case, this is part of the concept of diversification in your rotation to get the benefits of the change of how you feed the biome, right? All the things that are in the soil through the roots, right? Through the dead roots and tubates. So yeah, there's a lot of interest in it. I'm very curious about it, how it works in, because if it's like ensilage, right? You pull 100% of the crop off the field, the standing crop, and all you have left is maybe some, shatter that falls off, and then finally the roots. And it may not be a really great crop to add into a very high health, soil health type of rotation. Don't know. Nobody knows. Go to University of Missouri and ask them if they put it into the Sanborn trial, and then you might find out how it affects things.
I know Rodell has put out a couple of, I guess, I don't know if they're white papers around being used as rotation crop. I'll see if I can't pull those and get them put into our hemp hallway. I know we've got one of them, but I'll see what I can pull for additional resources. Thank you, Neil. Also, Neil's a fabulous resource. He's also very dedicated and working hard on our seed trials and helping to put together some of the protocols with Melissa Baldwin. I saw that there was a comment made by Dale to Melissa is incredible. Melissa Nelson at Southbound Bend Industrial Hemp has pulled some of this and worked on some of this as well. And so she's a great resource. Also, Carl, I saw your hand is up. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I want to chime in, I guess, a little bit on that. It's,
Please.
I guess, when you talk about the soil sequestration, I guess, in the sense of the plants growing, dying, the roots, you know, they're great. They go in, they're really adding to the humus, and you know, that's where you're getting some of that carbon sequestration. But I think when we're talking about carbon sequestration, I'm coming from the point of view of the biochar, for example. You know, I think you're getting a more truer representation of sequestration. When carbon in that form, a stable carbon, is put into the ground, it can remain there for thousands of years, like the terra preta. But that comes from actually stabilizing the carbon before it goes in the ground. Some of what with the regenerative agriculture is talking about, I think, is when, you know, the carbon that's part of the plant and gives back, and it's into the soil and it helps with the microbes and these sort of things. That sort of sequestration, I don't believe is actually long-lived, right? In the sense of, you know, hundreds of years or even millennia. It's going there and it's being consumed and used by the microbes, plants, and these sort of things. Because as a plant, if it's not stabilized, so if you take just a piece of wood and you put it into the ground, right? Over time, or even if you just leave it on top of the ground, that plant is going to give back all that carbon dioxide that it actually gave when it's sequestered. So maybe I can, okay, so the plant grows, it's capturing carbon. And as long as it lives, it's sequestering the carbon. But as soon as it dies, it's going to give back that carbon, right? It's going to give back to the environment and to the atmosphere in whichever way it is, right? So however long it takes to degrade, right, will give back that amount. So I think it's kind of a neutralizing kind of effect that we see kind of happening. However, if that plant grows, captures, and, you know, sequesters, and upon death we remove it, okay, then that material is then taken, goes through a process called pyrolysis, for example. Then it stabilizes that carbon, right? Then we can take that biochar and use it back to the soil amendment, add it back to the soil, and then it helps there. And that's a much more long-lived type of carbon. And there are studies that have shown that biochar added into the ground like that will give back, I think, about 40 or 50% as it breaks down. But it's a very long-lived thing. Hopefully that kind of helped to answer the question. But, you know, cover crops, you know, they're great, and depending on what you use, and you have all kinds of that allotropy that kind of works in conjunction with the plants, grow with one another, and these sort of things. Like, you know, I think it was Helmut that was talking the other day. He was talking about how alfalfa, you know, alfalfa with three as a rotational crop, but also as alfalfa will after three crops, you basically lock nitrogen in the ground to about 100 pounds per acre. Right, and then when you plant hemp on top of it, because of that that locking in the soil, that benefits basically the hemp that's growing after it. And there are other crops as well to grow. Clover is great cover crop, and that helps actually with weed control and other things. And of course, yeah, it's going to lock in a lot of this carbon into it. Sorry if I went long-winded. I'll let go. I'll stop now. I see Amanda laughing. Hopefully that helped answer some of the questions.
Yeah, those are all really good points. You know, the biochar is flinty carbon, right? This is the hard, persistent stuff that makes the soil black, right? The coal black, right? It's flinty coal. The stuff that's in agriculture that we're learning how to manage through the regenerative systems is this spongy material that we call humic decomposition. So one of the features, if you just go straight off, if you take the hemp, if you cut the crop and you burn it and you bring it back as pure carbon, one of the things you miss is that these materials in the humic cycle may persist in the ground in terms of the living portion of the soil that we're trying to get to regenerate in order to allow us to move to a system that we don't need as many high energy inputs in the hard fertilities and the pesticide chemistries. So yeah, flinty carbon's important. If we could import all the burnt materials out of an urban area, they could be used by agriculture for sure. But taking biomass, turning it into, hard charcoal, misses the point of this regenerative system that we're trying to figure out how to use. And it's biologic, so it's a new science for the young minds. Over.
I like that. I feel like we're on Clubhouse right now. And I'm done speaking. Next. Thank you, Neil, very much. Bruce, do you have anything you want to add? And any other questions? There was a lot of info there.
No, are there any more questions?
Yeah, does anybody have anything that they want to address? I saw that there are some great people that have joined. Mark, I saw you sneak in. I have to say hello to you. It's good to see you.
I have a question for Bruce.
Yeah, please, Austin, go ahead. Oh, good. I was going to get back to your question.
When are you going to build another car? It's one of the coolest cars I've ever seen. I'm just going to put it out there.
Thanks. I did build one and brought it to NOCO. Is that 2 years ago now? I don't remember.
I saw it there. Yep, that was the car. Well, but I want another one, and then another one after that, and then like a dozen more, and then the whole assembly line, like Henry Ford style. So
yeah, I would like to do that. I got to tell you, when we did our analysis of woven hemp fibers, replacing carbon fiber and fiberglass, rolled steel and rolled aluminum, all those materials are very carbon intensive, and combining pure hemp fiber with bioepoxy gets you down into the carbon negative range. Not terribly deeply, but it is potentially a carbon negative material if you keep an eye on your scope 1 through 3 emissions. So when we started seeing these other bigger ways to save an inhabitable planet, I mean, orders of magnitude larger, I put my efforts right now, at least for now, on hold for making carbon negative fiber. I may return to that, getting contacted by some people that may want to invest to help develop it. But if that happens, then you will see more cars, and
all right,
you'll see more aeronautic type of application, aerospace applications, and also consumer goods, which would adopt it even faster than the automobile industry.
Right.
When I don't
own a car and then I can just have it Ubered to my house, I'd love it to be a hemp car. So that's
you'll need to click on that option with Uber. Say, I would like to be a hemp car, please.
Yes, absolutely.
With hemp batteries.
Just like the airlines are doing, every time you order a ticket at the airline, it tells you what your carbon emissions are, or your sequestration in different spots, right? Or your avoidance. We'll do the same thing with a hemp car. You're saving this much, and with a regular car, you're spending this much. Or yes, that's awesome.
Ultimately, right now humanity is in a weird position. We make everything out of poison, and we pay those poison makers to do that, right? The subsidies. I was reading an article today that the oil and gas industry gets subsidies to the tune of $11 million a minute, right? And that's including the externalities. That's if you count the damage that these fossil fuel industries are doing to the earth. If we get rid of all those subsidies, and if we replace them with subsidies for growing renewable resources like hemp, it would change things completely overnight. we would, everything we could actually, people wouldn't look at all of us here that are in this group that might walk around and say, make everything possible from hemp, which is what we need to do. Our buildings can be made from hemp, our cars can be made from hemp. I could go on, you already know the story.
Awesome. Stephen Putter, I saw your hand is, I think your hand is up, if that's what that meant. Maybe you're just holding it up in the air, but you're welcome to jump in, sir. Do you have any questions?
I just have observations and yeah, maybe questions.
Sure.
We're going to plant hemp and we're all squarely behind hemp and it's all exciting and everything. But my question is this, personally, our project here will use hemp root for soil conditioning, because one of the biggest things that we have to do is we have to retain fresh water in our soils. So hemp is connected to a lot of dots. I won't be taking the roots out because next to that roots is my whole rhizosphere. All the fungal that I need in my soil is there. You can go and buy a John Deere tractor for $2 million and it will do 30 centimeters into the soil and destroying the soil and cutting it up at the same time to put organic material in. So we believe that by leaving the roots in the soil, we can do deep soil conditioning of up to the root of a hemp plant, which can be 3 feet, 4 feet, which to us is an advantage because that goes with no till and we retain the fresh water. The thing that concerns me is that the only one that has done agriculture successfully is nature itself. Nature grows. If you go to forests and places like that, if you come to Africa, you will see that nature works. Modern agriculture will fail. The maize will be looking like death next to the forest that doesn't even feel the drought. So when we say that we have to reduce animals, we are actually taking a step away from nature. Because if you're going to grow hemp and you're going to pump the soil full of petrochemical fertilizers, not only are you supporting an industry that you want to prevent, but you're also going to contaminate the world. You're going to kill the soils at the same time. So for me, there has to be balance between what we're trying to achieve with hemp without building the house on the one side and breaking it down on the other side.
I think
and these things needs to have discussions. That the land is there to plant. We might need the funding to scale, but the land is there to plant. The landowners in Zambia, the chiefs, who is the landowners in Zambia, are ready to plant thousands and thousands and thousands of hectares of hemp.
I think that the topics you just brought up are a lot of conversations we discuss in the meeting about not monocropping and about not destroying, and how do we add it into existing rotations to add value versus depleting soils. And I would say that I think something I'm the most impressed with, Stephen, about the industry and the people in the industry is that is at the forefront of their conversation is how do we make this a circular economy and provide value for all pieces along that supply chain. And I know that Bruce, when we talk about, and step in whenever you're ready or whenever you want, but when we talk about the methane for the cattle, it's not so much about reducing the cattle, but reducing their methane gas, right? And feeding them hemp reduces the amount of methane that they relieve or they let off. And so there's pieces of this that are not an end all be all or a substitute or take away from what is existing, but to add to that rotation or add to the feed or add to the existing biocomposites that then reduces that carbon or changes that footprint. And the life cycle analysis is analysis that we've reviewed from, like Patagonia sent one over just the other day that was really robust about fibers. It's, again, not about taking out or recreating, but adding into an existing supply chain that actually reduces the largest amount of carbon. Bruce, do you have anything you want to add to that or anything?
Well, yeah, I think Stephen made a very good point. And and so just to be clear, I'm not advocating that we stop eating any cows or chickens. Or I just kind of want to remind everybody, all we're looking at drawdown hemp is not to advocate anything, but just try to identify what are some of the biggest things that we can do. We're in a crisis mode right now. So ultimately, you say you get down to the point where you say, okay, should we be eating hemp burgers or should we be eating steaks? Well, there are others. Where was I going with this? I'm not saying that we should stop eating beef, but what I am saying is that we need to understand these numbers and what it poses as our options, and then start taking a look after we do that, right, on a large scale without making a value decision about the value of beef or not, and then start taking a look at, okay, well, what happens if we do go down this route? Well, it turns out, people are saying, well, the livestock, if properly raised, are good for agriculture if you do it correctly. If you do it incorrectly, it's not good. So there's a balance in all these things, and beyond that is the financial aspects as well. What's more realistic than others? Well, could we address the methane gas from beef by feeding them seaweed? There's a lot of folks that are advocating that. Maybe that's the answer on how to delete this problem, 1.5 gigatons per year. So again, we're not stating a value statement. We're not saying that hemp is the only answer to that issue. Just trying to be able to just trying to put the things out forward and then say, okay, now that we understand what does have the best opportunity, okay, let's say we're 10 years down the road from now and the entire planet's on fire. What's the president, and what are United Nations all going to say? Well, hell, we didn't do anything. I guess we ought to do something now. All right, let's pull out the guns. What are the big things we can do? We can do X, Y, and Z. Well, what's it going to cost? Well, we have to do all those analysis today so that we're able to make those kind of decisions down the road.
Thank you. We're right up on an hour, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time, but I see we have one more question. Naveed?
Yeah, that's Naveed. So one of the things that's frustrating to me is I'm from the textile industry, and I see the value of hemp fiber to be utilized in fashion and clothing. But there's nobody that I have seen anybody working on this thing, to how to improve the hemp fiber to be used in the textile, just the way that the Chinese and the Western Europeans have done. Why the US is not jumping on that? And because, we know that the fashion is one of the main contributors for the pollution and all those kind of things. So I think I see the value that, if people look at it and put some efforts into it, I think this could be, something very good for the environment, for the circularity and all those kind of things.
I love these comments because it just is like one more thing we need to talk about or focus on. And I invite you to come back. We do have some textile discussions. Actually, my textile group or our textile group at Global Hemp Association is what took off first and grew the most amount of legs. I also agree that it's got the biggest challenge when it comes to equipment and chemicals used to process in the United States. And so definitely room for growth, but I would love to make connections and help introduce you to a number of processors and people that are from the farm to the end product. But I think that's a great point. And the textiles, and I'm also happy to share with you the LCAs that I have received around the textiles as to why it just shows us why large brands are willing to invest and put in more capital to figuring out the degumming and the carding solutions that provide a higher quality fiber. Daryl and then Jane.
I would love to be part of it.
Absolutely.
I can do.
For sure. I would love to keep you in the loop. I'll send you an email right after this. Daryl, are you?
Yes.
Go ahead,
Thanks
sir.
to you and Bruce for putting this on, but there's a lot of people always on these calls that say they don't know we're doing this or don't know that's happening. There is so much going on in the hemp industry in the US and worldwide. I would say just if you have questions, reach out to Mandy, myself, Bruce, Drawdown Hemp, Green Growers of Texas, Melissa Nelson in South Bend, Kansas, Guy Carpenter at Bear Fiber. There's loads and loads of people actually doing stuff with hemp. I mean, hemp textiles, hemp construction, hempcrete, hemp blocks, Glen Donahoe. It's amazing what we're doing with hemp, but still we find the general public that doesn't know we're doing all this. So I would encourage everyone to just educate and research and reach out, please.
Thank you. I did just real quick share our YouTube channel. In addition to our hemp hallway, there's like a couple hundred interviews on our YouTube channel with different people from the industry where you'll be able to connect and you can actually type and sort textile meetings or different topics. And so I did just share that. Thanks for the reminder. Go ahead, Jane.
I am working on textiles. I'm working on I've designed and developed 5 stages from planting to harvesting to drying to processing and more. And I've even created a product that's never ever been marketed before. I'm very concerned that all of the plant is used. We've done a lot of research in Minnesota. We have a 61-day harvest for silk. So my goal is to try to find what the manufacturer wants and then produce that for him. The one miracle about hemp graphene batteries or hemp graphene nanosheets, which in France they're researching it for energy itself, is that a part of the plant that was considered a waste product is now worth between $500 and $1,000 a ton. And in my processing equipment, it is automated, OSHA standard, indoors. You're eliminating the 98 degrees humidity and eliminating any rain or any bad situations. And we're only facing more of that. Yesterday, the United Nations said, we don't have time anymore, people. And I've been working on this since I was 17 years old. I'm 70 now. And I can't tell you how excited I was when this was legalized. And I'm working with the University of Minnesota, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and the Agriculture Utilization Research Institute. And they got me an engineer who's on the top list of people for solving solutions in engineering. And it's been hard to convince people of how important this is, but there probably isn't much I don't know about it. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Bruce and Mandy. I'm in Hemp Drawdown only because I'm doing what I'm doing. I can't be as full-time a participant as I'd like to be. And Daryl, thank you for I've sent you a couple of emails. So I'm open to any questions, and I'm only trying to fix the problems we face. In the United States, we had 357 200 and some thousand acres in tillage last year. If you take that by 33%, you have 177 million, if I said thousands, million, 210,000 acres that would be a third crop rotation. And that's what I'm marketing to farmers. Last year I grew it, I had a field day. It was absolutely wonderful. We had 50 solid attendees that stayed. And the local publisher to the newspaper came and he did a video. It won 2nd place in the Minnesota Film Society for a movie last year. So I'm a star. No, I'm not.
Let's look at how we can, I think what I hear often, I mean, and there are still a lot of silos of people creating content and publishing information, right? I said for a while, and Karen, I know you can agree with this. For those that don't know, Karen is also an incredible advocate on our team and an advisor to Global Hemp Association. But we've talked a lot about the value of bringing the content together and creating a place where we can distribute peer-reviewed content or peer-reviewed studies and information, as well as the connections. Something we've done is really focused on the connectivity of people, right? But that also includes other organizations. And so if you're part of an organization similar to like Drawdown, we are all about partnering and collaborating, because the more we're able to connect, we can redirect and build relationships outside of, one meeting or one group or one state. And so I open that up also, Jane. I'd love to learn more about what you're doing and how we can support and pull in those resources.
I pretty much pulled my big girl panties up.
Okay.
I've had my retired accountant work with me for 3 years for nothing. I'm known in Minnesota for facing challenges and getting them done. I'm the first person in the United States and the only person that's ever sued the Air Force and won. I live in abject poverty. All my spare money goes into this project. I put my house on, put a mortgage on my house to do this. I don't mess around usually. And I can't, like I said, I miss you guys on Drawdown. It's a wonderful, exhilarating experience for us all to share that space and know that we're working together for the better good of everything. It means a great deal to me that we're doing this and that you're doing this. I can't always be here. You know, I just got your text message right at 1:55. I
Okay.
didn't think I'd get on through my phone, and it was getting
I
too
real
hot.
quick,
So then,
I
you
real
know.
quick want to, before we jump off, I see a couple people
Yeah.
are jumping off, but I want to remind everybody to get registered for NOCO. We would love to see you. Bruce is also going to be at NOCO. I said that out loud before I confirmed. I think you're presenting at NOCO. Okay, good.
Oh,
We'll be able to dive into this a little bit further, and not just Bruce, but some other people on the drawdown team that will be present. We've got a pretty good presence at Global Hemp Association at NOCO this year with a nice booth, and then we're hosting our awards banquet. So I did drop in the chat a link for you to nominate people. There are a few of you on here that have been nominated multiple times. I see you. And so it is showing up. Please, put in a good word for people that you know that are doing it right, that may not be out and seen, that may have their head down, working their guts out, right, to move this needle forward. And so it's really an opportunity for us collectively to highlight people that are doing it right in the industry. And then we've got some beautiful awards and a beautiful awards banquet. I really encourage you guys to attend, get your tickets. They are selling out. GHA and Morris over at NOCO have done an incredible job at putting it together. And I just saw that they are moving venues. And I'm really excited. I know that it kind of causes anxiety for people that we're moving from Crown to the Gaylord. The Gaylord, if you haven't seen it, is a beautiful venue. It's a major upgrade that we scored. And so I'm super, super excited. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Joanne. Oh, Morris, you're on. Hi. I thought maybe you jumped off. So I'm glad. Morris, if you want to give a little highlight about what you're working on, and yeah, tell us about how NOCO's going.
Well, hey, everyone.
Hey.
Well, I jumped on there for a bit, and then I got a phone call, and it's been, well, as you might guess, fairly chaotic about everything going on in my world right now. But hey, so be the hemp world. And anyway, let me click this off. That's getting to be a bit annoying. So yeah, we are in mid pivot right now, and we're actually really excited, although it's a drag that we got canceled a week ago today from the venue that we were at. And like I said in the post I put out there, at least we weren't canceled because of cancel culture. I'm still waiting on that. Somebody's going to try to do that to me eventually. But anyway, as far as the event goes, we are moving to it's the finest facility in the Western United States. It's definitely the finest facility in Colorado. And we've got a great lineup of speakers. And Mr. Bruce, who's been speaking the whole time, or a good chunk of the time, is going to talk about carbon. And we've also got the Pan Exchange folks that'll be talking about carbon. And we've got a great business conference, an investment summit, NOCO hemp pitch, ag forum or ag tech forum, a farm symposium. As Mandy was talking, we've got an awards dinner that's going to be fabulous. My phone keeps ringing. Imagine that. That doesn't.
I bet you're slammed. I bet you're so busy after your announcement.
But that's what we do. It's really been chaotic since we started NOCO. Every single year has thrown us curveballs, and when you produce events, you just have to be able to kind of do things on the fly and pivot. And fortunately for us, I've got a great team, and this is what we do. And we're going to pull it off, and we're going to have hopefully the best NOCO that we've ever had. And we look forward to everybody coming out, and whoever's there underneath the roof, we're going to collaborate, we're going to cooperate, and we're going to get this hemp industry back up and running and moving in the right direction after COVID.
I can't wait. Bruce, go ahead.
Hey, Morris, do we need to redo our reservations at the hotel, or are those all automatically transferred over? What's going on?
So if you've already registered at the Crown Plaza, all those have been transferred over to the Gaylord, and you'll be contacted either by the Crown Plaza or the Gaylord to confirm that your room has been transferred. It's at the same rate. Advance rate is $129. If you haven't reserved your room, you can do that now through the Gaylord, and it's $129 through March 9th. After that, it's going to go up, and I'm not sure to what price, but probably a couple $100 because again, this is a 5-star facility. It's beautiful, and it's far and away the best facility we've ever been in for NOCO Hemp Expo. And hopefully this is the new home of NOCO Hemp Expo for years to come.
Awesome.
And if I can just ask, if you guys are coming, put the word out there and like people's social media posts and just spread the good word, because it's challenging times for everybody coming out of the pandemic. And obviously we have other crazy things going on in the world that are more important than a hemp expo when we look across the pond and see what's going on over there with our brothers and sisters in the Ukraine, and prayers to Sergey and his family and those folks, because it's tragic. And we're going to gather and we're going to show support as a hemp industry for world peace and for the Ukraine and everybody there in Europe that's facing all these things that are going on, because it's just not good. And can hemp and cannabis bring peace to the world? Well, we're going to try.
We can, as people.
Yes,
this
we
is
can.
our opportunity. I'm so excited. We get on these calls. There's 50, 100 people on these calls on a weekly basis. And now we have an opportunity to get together, and the energy is so different. So Morris, I'm stoked about this opportunity to work together at this event and to have you guys and sit down and have a beautiful dinner and collaborate. So if you need anything, Morris, don't hesitate to holler or lean on us. I'll put it out there again. Please share what you're doing, or please share these links, because people buy from people they know and like. And so it really helps us, whether you're attending or not, to promote the event and to really encourage the collaboration. So thanks again, Morris.
All right. Thanks,
I'm
everyone.
excited. Okay. Well, thank you very, very much. Bruce, anything before we close out?
Thank you for the opportunity, Mandy. Always good to be with you.
Absolutely. Very excited. If anybody else needs anything, yell at us, and I'm off. We've got an advisory meeting here and a board meeting here in a little bit. So I'm going to go prepare for that and then sign off for the day. See you guys. Thank you very, very much. Thanks, Klaus. Good to see you. Carl, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dave. It was good to see you. Joanne, if there's anything else you want to add, yell at me.
Just a reminder that we can continue the conversation over at Hemp Hallway. So feel free to join us there, and check us
Good
out.
point. You're awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. I'll have Kayla connect with you or send over info. Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate you. Let's get you up on one of these here pretty soon. I'd love to learn more about what you're working on and share.
Yeah, we'll work on that. Right now, we're waiting for a National Science Foundation grant and keeping our fingers crossed on that,
Okay. Really. I'll send you all the good vibes and energy.
Thank you ever so much for letting me attend these. This is great.
Absolutely.
Bye,
we'll talk soon. Okay, see you later, guys. Sam, if you're still on, I'm going to reach out. I'd love